Hello, my name is Nicole Davis, and today I will be giving my lesson presentation on when to use essere or avere in passato prossimo. And so this lesson would be theoretically taught to ninth grade, maybe 10th grade Italian students. There is definitely some background knowledge that the students would be expected to have, so this would probably come a little bit later in the year. So follow along with me, and I'll walk you through it. So the lesson objectives are, at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to explain in English what the rule is for when to use essere and when to use avere in the passato prossimo. They will be able to select the correct helping verb for different level appropriate sentences written in Italian, and they will be able to determine which verbs use which helping verb in clear-cut examples. And that finishes up there. So my teacher's notes, like I said, ninth grade Italian, prior knowledge. What's really important is that they know how to construct the basics of passato prossimo, and they know how to conjugate in the present tense. And so you'll see in a second that I start off my lesson with a brief recap of how to conjugate in passato prossimo, just to get students back on track and thinking what they need to know. Most likely this lesson would happen the day after really introducing passato prossimo, and so students would have a very clear picture in their mind of what that conjugation looks like. Okay, so like I said, this would be my do now. It says fate adesso is do now in Italian, and so how do you conjugate avere and essere in passato prossimo? And like I just said, this is just to get the students thinking what they need to be orienting themselves to for the lesson. Okay, so now I would give students time to do that, and then this is my first little smartboard activity, and so I would hopefully have at least one student come to the board, and all of you that he or she would have to do is drag and drop the correct conjugation over here into the correct subject. And so abbiamo avuto is going to go down to noi. So noi is we, so we had abbiamo avuto. If you wanted to say you all had avete avuto, you would put that in voi. Avuto would go with lui, lei, or lei formale, and so that would come right there. Hai avuto, that would be in the to form. Ho avuto would be in the io form, and hanno avuto would be in the loro form. And students could do this on the board, hopefully getting that interaction piece up to the lesson to start them off. So now this part would be to go over the essere component of the do now, and so this is a little bit trickier for me to do here. Hopefully it would be more fun for the students, but essentially you just flip over one. Half these cards say the subject, so io, tu, lui, lei, noi, voi, and loro, and then half say something, one of the verbs, and so that one was incorrect, so they don't stay flipped over. So this is lui, lei. I'm pretty sure that that was the lui, lei. Here we are, so now I have to find the noi. I don't know where the noi is, so we're gonna have to play with this a little bit, and students would hopefully find this enjoyable, more enjoyable than just coming up and writing on the board. I'm not really... Okay, I did that faster than I anticipated doing it on the spot. Okay, so now I can reset that and do it again for the next class. Moving on, this now I would just put this on the board in order to allow students to copy the correct conjugations if they had not gotten it already, and so as you can see, it's just written out everything that we just did in the two interactive practices, so students could correct their answers if they didn't have enough time to do that during the game section. Okay, so now moving on, the lesson today is focusing on when to use which helping verb, and so when I say helping verb, I mean whether you use avere plus the ending here, mangiato or rimasta. All of these are key components to forming passato prossimo, and so you need the helping verb plus that. The participio passato is what they say in Italian. So the helping verb avere or essere, and so I would put these two examples up and say ho mangiato la torta. La torta is cake, so this sentence is saying I ate the cake. Cake is here for students to see that visual component. Maria è rimasta a casa. Maria remained at home. This is a picture of a home so that the students can have that visual component. So these are correct examples. Incorrect examples would be over here. Ho nato 15 anni fa. You would not say ho nato. You would have to use essere instead of avere here. Maria è letto il libro. You would not say è letto. You would have to use avere here. And so now I would ask students what they think is part of the rule for when to use avere or essere, and I'm hoping that I would have them write it down and give them a graphic organizer so that they could be following along with where we were in the lesson. And I'm hoping that at this point they would say something like, if there is a noun or if there is the il or la following the verb, then you would use avere. Okay, so now the next slide. We have two more examples. So yes, you would say abbiamo scritto sull'esame, we wrote on the exam, or gli studenti sono andati a scuola, the students went to school. You would not say abbiamo stato contento alla spiaggia, we were happy at the beach. You wouldn't use abbiamo, you would have to use the essere version. Gli studenti sono bevuti l'acqua, you would not say sono, you would have to use the avere version. And again, I'm hoping here students would say something along the lines of if there's a noun, if there's an object here, that's when you would use avere. If there's not, if there's a place maybe they would say, then you would use essere. Okay, so now the last two examples would come up, and I'm sorry, I have to scroll down the way my computer works. Il giorno è finito, you would say il giorno è finito is finished, the day is finished. Voi avete iniziato il quiz, you all have began your quiz. You would not say tu sei finito il tuo compito, so this is a little bit trickier because finito is used in both sentences. Here you use essere, here you are not supposed to use essere. And so at this point I would have students all be working together, and hopefully we would have already established a class rule, and now we're trying to see if the class rule matches these rules. And so hopefully they would be able to determine that because of this, il programma ha iniziato, meaning the program has started, that is incorrect. You would say il programma è iniziato, you would use essere there. So I'm hoping that students would be able to pick up on the fact that if there's a direct object, that's when you use avere. If there's no direct object in the sentence, then you would use essere. This is a pretty complicated concept and it takes a while for students to get, so hopefully this deducing it would be easier. I would also give this lesson to any student who needed to see it after class, so that they could re-look at it. And in that sense, I have little slides here which have me speaking the sentence, so if they wanted to hear it as well as see it and see the visual component here, they would be able to do that. And so I'll just play one for you. We don't need to hear all of them, but il giorno è finito. If they can't hear me say that in person, they can hear if they click here. Il giorno è finito. Okay? So that now I would have students come up and write here what the correct answer would be. So I won't do all of them, but for example, you would have to write sono nato 15 anni fa, and so on and so forth. I can make that a little bit smaller so that it fits there. So it should be sono nato, not o nato. For me, it would be sono nata because I'm feminine. For the males in the class would be sono nato. And so on and so forth. They could come up and write all the corrections, just switching the ones over here that have essere should all be in avere, and the ones here that have avere should all be in essere. Okay, so now here is where we get to have some fun again. So students would be able to come up, and what we have here is the verbs that are very obvious. They're verbs that you either need a direct object in order to make that verb make sense, and so they're always going to take avere, or they're verbs that you are never ever going to have a direct object. You could have an indirect object but not a direct object, and so those verbs are always going to take essere. And so just to get students thinking about those types of things, I would have them come up and drag and drop the verbs into the correct helping verb column. So giocare is avere, and cucinare is always going to take avere. Mangiare, always going to take avere. Morire is always going to take essere. Morire means to die, and you cannot die something. It doesn't mean to die as in the art form, it means to die as in a death, and so there's never going to be a direct object there. Same thing with venire, which means to come. You're always going to use essere. Andare, to go, same thing. Parlare is always going to be avere because it means to talk, and you always have to talk to something, talk about something. Mangiare, to eat. Cucinare, to cook. Giocare, to play. Uscire is to go out, so that's always going to take essere. Okay, so now this would be the last part. I would have my students first fill out a worksheet, which basically asks them to do the same thing but in sentences, and so I won't bore you with the worksheet since we're running a little long here, but after they did the worksheet, I would then have them come up and check their answers. This could potentially be a do now the next day if they needed to finish the worksheet for homework. And so they would just need to drag and drop these into the correct vortex of the helping verb. So number 1, mangiare, they hopefully would have said avere. Number 2, finire, if I remember correctly, that's a finire that uses essere. Nope, I did not remember correctly, and so that's what would have happened. Hopefully they would be looking at their worksheet, and so they would know that number 2, finire, uses avere. Number 3, andare, uses essere. 4, cucinare, uses avere. 5, stare, I think that one uses essere on the worksheet. 6, uscire, uses essere. 7, parlare, uses avere. 8, nascere, uses essere. 9, giocare, uses avere. 10, morire, essere. 11, finire, avere. Oops, wrong, finire, that one was essere. And 12, suonare would be avere. And that's it. That would be the end of the lesson. Thank you so much for watching.